Hi, I'm Debbie and welcome to Book and Bujo, where I talk about all things books, bullet journals, and stationery. Today, join me for my July TBRopoly and see if the board is nice to me or if it is mean yet again for another month. Hi again, welcome if you're new, and thank you for joining me again if you have been here before. So to start off, we're going to go through how I did in June to see if I get a reward or a punishment or if it's kind of a wash. See how it went. So for June, I started out with a wonderful rewards card that was to remove one spin, and that was great because I believe I rolled a 9, so that brought me down to 8 books. The board then proceeded to give me 5 doubles. So I ended up with, what, like 13 books total? That was a lot. Plus I had 6 Readathons, my book clubs, Readalongs, and all the other things I was already doing. Plus I had 2 handbell concerts that I was performing in. We had rehearsals every week the week before, which we normally just rehearse once a week. We had rehearsal twice a week the 2 weeks before that. So yeah, I had a whole lot less time to read than I normally do. So let's see how I did. Let me give you a little sneak peek here. So I did, there are some stuff colored in, which is good. There's some stuff that's not colored in. Still have almost a week, not quite, almost a week left of June to go, so we'll see if I can finish some of my books. But the first roll was an even, and for that I pulled to read a J&R Tolkien book. I cheated just a little bit, so it's still J&R Tolkien, but it was an audiobook of him reading excerpts from his poetry. So excerpts from like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Silmarillion, and some other books, and I think he had a couple other poems from other authors thrown in as well. And it was only like 20 minutes, but I did complete that. So roll number 2 was TBR Jar, and I pulled Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol, and I did read that. It was very good. It was really interesting. Roll number 3 was an even, and that was to read an ebook. And for that I had Oathbringer, and I have not read that. I have not started that yet. Now the goal was to read 50% of the book because it's a book for the Cosmere Readalong with Elliot Brooks, and that was for June and July. So I was going to read half of it this month and half of it next month. So we'll see. I'm really hoping to at least start it by June 30th. Maybe I can get 5% of the way in. I don't know. We'll see. So the next was an even card, and that was to read a book from the Fated series. And I do have the first 3 books as kind of like a little 1-book mashup of the 3, but I did read the first one. It was a way. So the mystery is solved. I figured out what happened. So they're just different covers of the book, but it's all the same author, the same book, everything, because I looked at 2 different versions of it. One that said it was called Awaken, and one that was just Heirs of Fire. So it's actually Awaken, the Heirs of Fire, or the Heirs of Fire, Awaken, the Heirs of Magic. So it's the full title, and some books just have Awaken on it, some books just have the Heirs of Magic. So that's where the mystery solved was. And Rachel Humphrey Daigle and Humphrey Quinn are the same person, just pseudonyms for the same author. So there we go. So I did read that, and it was really interesting. I did enjoy it. And there were dragon-like creatures in there, so that worked for my Once Upon a Readathon dragon team. My next roll was a booktuber rec, and that was to read Reaper's Gale, which is the 7th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series, and I have started that. I am about 30% of the way through, so I will most definitely finish that one by the end of the month. There's another win. So my next role was to read a nonfiction, and for that I chose Make Time, How to Focus on What Matters Every Day, and that is by Jake Knapp and John Zaratsky. And I did read this, and this was for the J&R Book Club, and I loved it. It was so good. I highly recommend this book if you have not read it. They've got some great tips. It's super easy to read. Highly recommend. Okay, next book was, I landed on classic, and for that I read Mary Poppins, the first book in the series by P.L. Travers, and I did read that. And then, an even card, a book you keep putting off, and for that I read Home, which is the second book in the Binti series, and I did read that. My next roll was another even card, and that was to read Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, which is the second book in the Alice in Wonderland series, and I did read that. My next roll was an odd card, and that was to read an adult book, and for that I chose Wayward, and I am this far through, so not super far in, but I still have a week left, so I will definitely finish this very large print book. So I will finish this by the end of the month. And that's for the Full Moon Book Club. Next was another even card, and that was to read the first book in a series, and for that I chose Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, which is the first book in the Book of the Ancestor series, and that was for the Backlist Book Club. And I'm very glad I read that. Okay, next roll was another even, and that was to read David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and I did read that, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very good book. And then my last and final 13th roll, I do love the number 13, but it was a little much this month. So my last roll, I landed on Amazon Borrows, and I rolled a 6, and for that I read The Reign of the Dragon Queen by Cadence Connor, and that is the first book in the Dragon Reign series, and I thoroughly enjoyed that book, and I did read that. So overall for my TBR, I am partway through 2 books, and I have 1 that I have not started. The rest I did complete. So I will have started Oathbringer by the end of the month. So technically, that's a win. That says I completed my TBR, because I have to at least start all my books and be at least halfway through. And so if I'm halfway through the halfway mark, I have to be at least a quarter of the way through Oathbringer. So I'm basically going to call that a wash and just say it's a tie. I don't get a reward, but I don't necessarily have to have a punishment either. If for some reason I do not get to Oathbringer by the end of the month, then I will choose a punishment, and my punishment for July would be, if that happens, would be that I cannot participate in any readathons until I complete my TBR. So if for some reason I complete my TBR at the end of July and there's some readathons I want to participate in, I can go through and see if anything I read fits with that readathon, and then I can count that towards that readathon. There we go. That's the end of June. So we'll call it a tie. I didn't necessarily win and complete everything, but I didn't necessarily not complete everything either. If that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense down in the comments. Or if you think I should take a punishment anyway, let me know. Alright, if you want to hear about all the other books, the readathons, readalongs, and all of that, you'll have to stay tuned for that video coming up soon. My July TBR, which I do not have in here yet. Stay tuned for my reading journal. Plan with me coming up soon as well. Now what you're actually here for, my July TBRopoly, and let's see how I did. Alright, so grab a beverage of choice. Today I am drinking an iced tea because it is getting a little warmer, but actually it's very cool in the mornings, and the breeze that comes through is actually kind of chilly, so I'm still wearing my sweaters. But anyway, I have some iced tea. It's a Assam Black, and it's delicious. So grab some water, grab some coffee, grab some tea, whatever your beverage of choice, maybe a lemonade, and let's see how my TBRopoly was this month. So let's see how many rolls I'm going to do. And 8 books. That's doable. So I rolled an 8, which means I need to read 8 books this month. Alright, so last game I landed on Amazon Borrows, so that's where I'll start this time. And let's go for our first roll. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is an odd card. That is to read the next book in a series. Roll number 1 was an odd card, and that was to read the next book in a series. And for that, I'm going to read Toll the Hounds, which is the 8th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson. In Daruzhistan, the city of blue fire, it is said that love and death shall arrive dancing. It is summer and the heat is oppressive, but for the small round man in the faded red waistcoat, discomfiture is not just because of the sun. All is not well. Dire portents plague his nights and haunt the city streets like fiends of shadow. Assassins skulk in alleyways, but the quarry has turned, and the hunters become the hunted. Very excited to delve into that one, especially after Reaper's Gale, so that I'm, again, only like 30% of the way through, but it's good. It's a lot of known characters and known places, so you're not having to learn as many new things this time around so far. So I'm enjoying that. Roll number 2. 3. 1, 2, 3. So 23 and 23. That is to read Lore. That's exciting. I've wanted to get to that. All right, roll number 2, I landed on 23 in 2023, so the list of books that I came up with and that I wanted to try and read this year, which I haven't really gotten to too many of those yet, which see how the second half of the year goes. So 23 and 2023, and for that I chose Lore. So I'm very excited to get to that one. It's been in my sights for a while, and so I'm glad to finally get around to it. Every 7 years, the Agon begins. As punishment for a past rebellion, 9 Greek gods are forced to walk the earth as mortals, hunted by the descendants of ancient bloodlines, all eager to kill God and seize their divine power and immortality. Sounds very intriguing. I've heard mostly good things, some mixed a little bit, but I'm excited to get into it. Roll number 3. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Another odd card. Anything you want. Oh, beautiful. All right, roll number 3 was an odd card, and I drew Anything You Want. That's pretty nice. So for this one, I am choosing one of my book club books, and that is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. Delaney Myers Petrov is tired of being seen as fragile just because she's deaf. So when she's accepted into a prestigious program at Godboll University that trains students to slip between parallel worlds, she's excited for the chance to prove herself. But her semester gets off to a rocky start as she faces professors who won't accommodate her disability and a pretentious upperclassman fascinated by Delaney's unusual talents. So that one sounds intriguing, and that one is for the Full Moon Book Club with Jan Agaton. Roll number 4. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's an even card. A 5-star prediction. Roll number 4 was an even card, and that was to read a 5-star prediction. So for this one, I chose Best Served Cold, which is the 4th book in the First Law world by Joe Abercrombie. And I was debating on this one. I couldn't really think of too many of the other books that I think I would actually give 5 stars to. So the First Law trilogy, I pretty much gave all of those books 4 and 4.5 stars. But I've heard better things about this one, that this one are not better things. I've heard that this one is even better than the first 3. So I'm going to give it a 5-star prediction. There have been 19 years of blood. The ruthless Grand Duke Orso is locked in a vicious struggle with the squabbling League of 8, and between them they have bled the land white, while armies march, heads roll, and cities burn. Behind the scenes, bankers, priests, and older, darker powers play a deadly game to choose who will be king. Sounds intriguing, and I'm very looking forward to reading it. And this one is for the Ketchup Book Club for reading the Joe Abercrombie First Law World books. Roll number 5. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another odd card. Read an ebook. Roll number 5 was an odd card, and that was to read an ebook. And for that, I chose Court of Nightmares, and that is by K.A. Knight and is the book club pick for the J&R Book Club. There are many things that go bump in the night, and I am one of them. As a vampire who was born to fulfill a prophecy, my life was planned before I was created. I obeyed every rule, and I became the perfect vampire. But one night changed everything. Rejected by the man who was destined for me, who was supposed to love me forever, I do the only thing I can. I flee. Into the night, nursing my broken heart. Being a rejected mate corrupts the soul, however, and in this game of courts and kings, nobody wins. Nobody except the monsters in the shadows. The monsters that save me. That one sounds very interesting. I'm intrigued. So I feel like TBRopoly is trying to make up for how rough it was last month, and it's making it pretty easy. Hopefully I don't jinx myself with 3 more rolls to go. So roll number 6. 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, we've made it around the board because we started here. And 9 is an odd card. It's to read a classic. Great. I love classics. Roll number 6 was an odd card, and that was to read a classic. And for that, I chose Catcher in the Rye by S.D. Salinger. I've been wanting to read this book for a while, so finally going to get into it. It's Christmas time, and Holden Caulfield has just been expelled from yet another school. Fleeing the crooks at Pensy Prep, he pinballs around New York City seeking solace in fleeting encounters. Shooting the bull with strangers in dive hotels, wandering alone around Central Park, getting beaten up by pimps and cut down by erstwhile girlfriends. The city is beautiful and terrible, in all its neon loneliness and seedy glamour, its mingled sense of possibility and emptiness. Holden passes through it like a ghost, thinking always of his kid sister Phoebe, the only person who really understands him, and his determination to escape the phonies and find a life of true meaning. Not the typical book that I tend to read, but that's one of the reasons why I love this TBRopoly, because there's always something new and different and interesting, and it helps to get me out of my comfort zone. Roll number 7. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another odd card. Usually I get all even, so it's kind of different. Read a middle grade. Roll number 7 was an odd card, and that was to read a middle grade book. And for this I chose The Secrets of Winter House, which is the second book in the Winter House series by Ben Gooderson. Now this one is shelved as both YA and middle grade, so the first book, Winter House, I kind of placed that upper middle grade, lower YA, so I'm going to put this one around that same area, so I'm counting it as an upper middle grade book. The bookish puzzles, phantom mysteries, and evil curses await as Elizabeth returns to Winter House in The Secrets of Winter House, the second book in Ben Gooderson's magical series. I don't really want to read too much of the synopsis on that one because it is the second book in the series and there might be spoilers for the first book and I don't want to do that to anyone. So, all right, 8th and hopefully final roll. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is an even card. And that is to read Shadow Magic, the first book in the series. Roll number 8. Is this really it? No doubles, no weirdness, no strange things coming up. I got all like good prompts and super easy. What? Crazy. It's like TBR is making it up to me for being so awful last month. Not really awful, just challenging. TBRopoly was very challenging last month, and it's being very nice to me this month to make up for it. I'm very grateful. So maybe July I will be able to play a little catch up. We'll see. All right. For my 8th and final book, I had an even card, and that is to read the first book in the Shadow Magic series. Now, the Shadow Magic series is a compilation of, I believe it's 7 books. Each book is by a different author. And so that one's going to be interesting. I do have all of them on my Kindle, so that's good. So if I like the first one, I can keep going. So I believe each of the books is the first book in a series for that author. So we'll see how it goes. But the first book in the Shadow Magic series is Huntress Born, and that's by Amy Esterling, and that's the first book in the Wolf Legacy series. Werewolf and baker Ember leaves her pack to hunt for her missing half-brother. But with danger growing on all sides, it's only a matter of time before she gets burned. Werewolf baker, I mean, what more do you need? Sounds very interesting. So that was it for my TBRopoly. Crazy. Like the last couple months I've had a bunch of doubles and like 13, 15 books on my TBR. So, oh, it's going to be nice just to have 8. It's just lazily read. Not have to be rushing and listening faster speeds on audiobook, because then you don't get... Sometimes it works out really well, especially if the author reads kind of slow. It's nice to be able to speed them up. And if I'm doing something that's mindless, like folding laundry or something like that, I don't need to pay attention to what I'm doing. I can listen just the audiobook so I can listen to it faster. But sometimes it's nice just to slow things down and just take them in. So hopefully that's what I'll get to do in July. And I also was able to get a bunch of my read-along and book club books and all of that onto my TBR, so that is perfect. So let's start with a couple of year-long read-alongs that I'm doing. So the Buzzwordathon, of course, and for July it's weather-related words, and there's a couple. So the first one I thought about using was Shadow of Magic, or Shadow Magic, because shadow is weather-related, but that's the title of the compilation and not necessarily of the series or the book, so I decided not to go with that one. But I did go with Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. That'll be a fun one. Buzzwordathon is with Books and Lala. So A Year in Aldea is with Gia Book Roast, and again I have 2 characters going. Here's the little Adventures in Aldea. So for Ariel, she had to visit the locked library and had to read a book she already owned, and for that she read Essence, and that's the last book in the Rune series by Edna Walters, and she did read that. So now she is on to having to brew a potion of sleepless night. So you read only when it's dark. So whatever book I choose, I have to read at night. And then for Karasu, he did stop by the Crossroad Tavern and refreshed with a little drink and a night's sleep, and had to read an author's note, or had to read a book with an author's note, and for that he read Edge Dancer while he was relaxing in his room, and that's by Brandon Sanderson. For July, he has to pocket a scroll of light summons, and for that he has to read when it's light outside. So those I think I'm gonna choose as I go through the month and see, because usually I read like a physical book in the morning and afternoon, and then at night I read from my Kindle. So I'll see where I go from there. It'll most likely be either Court of Nightmares or Huntress Born for Karasu's reading at night, and then most likely The Whispering Dark or Toll of the Hounds for Ariel for reading during the day. Alright, book clubs. J&R Book Club with Jashi Curran. We're reading Court of Nightmares by K.A. Knight, and that one I did get on my TBR. For the Full Moon Book Club with Jan Agaton, we're reading The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, and that one I also got on my TBR. For the Howling Pack with the Wild Sasha, we don't know yet. She hasn't released what the book club book is for July yet, so that one is a blank space for now, and I will fill that one in later. The Catch-Up Book Club with Becca and the Books and the crew is Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, and that one I did get on my TBR, and that's the book for July and August. And then for the Backlist Book Club with Covers with Cassidy, we're reading Grey Sister, and that is the second book in the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence, and that's the July and August book. For the Shadowhunter read-along with Love Lisa, we are reading Lost Book of the White, which is the second book in the Eldest Curses series by Cassandra Clare. And then for Malazan Book of the Fallen with Kay's Hidden Shelf, we're reading Toll of the Hounds, which is the 8th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. And then for the Wheel of Time read-along, that is the book for June and July. That is The Shadow Rising, and that is the 4th book in the Wheel of Time series. Yeah, 4th book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. And that is for June and July. And then for the Discworld series with literary diversions, we are reading Small Gods and Lords and Ladies, which is the 13th and 14th book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. And then for the Cosmere read-along with Elliot Brooks, we are reading Oathbringer, and that's the book for June and July. And we are also reading Secret Project number 3, which I do not have, and not sure if I will be able to get that from anywhere. If I do, my library had the first 2, so if it ends up getting the 3rd one, I'll read it. If not, I will put that off until August or September, whenever my library gets that in. And that's it. So not too bad. So a total of 13 books, including read-alongs and book clubs. So that's awesome. And my year-long readathons. So that's awesome, where just my TBRopoly for the last month was 13, not including book clubs, read-alongs, readathons, and all of that. Crazy. So I definitely think that is doable. But if I don't have to take a punishment and don't have to skip any readathons, there is a readathon in July, which sounds really fun. It's called the Mid-Year Reading Scramble, and that's with The Word Nerd, and I will leave her channel linked below if you want to check it out. And it's basically to catch up on your TBRs. So I thought that was perfect for this month, because that's kind of what I need to do. So there's 3 different paths that you can take. It's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of thing. So you can read down your TBR, you can read through your newest books. I chose read down your physical TBR, but I chose the catch-up path. So you choose, so I kind of penciled it in here. She actually has some printables that you can print off and stick in your journal, but I just have a black and white printer, and they're always so pretty with all these colors that I tend to just draw a basic one in. So basically you start with the first book, your first choice, which is your most recent read. And if I do end up doing this, I will read lore. And from here, there's 2 different paths that you can choose. So you can either go to newest release or shortest book. And I chose shortest book, and that is Huntress Born, because it's only like 210 pages, somewhere in there. And then from there, you have 2 choices. And you can either read the longest book on your TBR, or you can read a physical book for your TBR. And for that, I'm going to choose the longest book, which is Toll of the Hounds, and I believe that's 1,008 pages. So technically Oathbringer is longer, it's 1,223 pages, but if I start that this month in June, then there'll be a lot less pages. So I'm going to go with Toll of the Hounds. And then from there, you have the final 2 choices. So you can either read next in a series, or you can read a book for an abandoned vlog. And I don't have any abandoned vlogs right now. I have a couple that I'm working on, but have not abandoned them. So I will skip that one and go to next in the series, and that one is a few different books I could choose for that. So it's kind of a toss-up between Grey Sister and Lost Book of the White. So I will choose one of those for that one. And that is it for my TBR for July. What does your TBR look like? Do you play a TBR game? Do you have a specific game that you like to play to choose your TBRs? Do you do a TBR jar? Do you do a prompt jar? TBRopoly? Do you play along with somebody else's, so let them do the roles and then you pick a book from the prompt that they chose? Or do you try and actually read some of the books that they choose as well? Because that would be fun. So there's like the TBR Trivial Pursuit from J.D. Ray Reads that she used to do, Becca's Bookopoly, Kaylani Simply Me has her TBR Bingo, the Wheel of TBR Wheel from Cody at Cody's Book Corner. Which one do you do? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to find out. But thank you again so much for joining me today, and I had a lot of fun going over my TBR with you. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to so you don't miss any videos from me. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever I release a new video. And until next time, keep reading. Bye!